Yo, welcome back to a brand new video, and we're here with Baseball Doesn't Exist, and why Ted Williams is frozen in a lab. Now, normally, I don't really watch baseball, I don't really watch baseball videos, but this one really caught my eye just because of the title, why someone is frozen in a lab. It's not even because of baseball, it's just because I'm curious why someone is frozen, so let's check it out.
Ted Williams is frozen in a highly secured cryonics lab so he can be brought back to life hundreds of years in the future.
Is he really?
Ted Williams was a baseball hero, a war hero, and an American hero. He was such a hero, he was chosen to live twice. If you ask the scientists currently storing his frozen body, his life never actually ended. It is on pause, waiting for reanimation. But when Ted Williams is brought back to life in the future, will he even be happy about it? When Ted Williams passed away in 2002, it was a big deal. And when the public found out that he would be frozen in a lab to be cloned or revived in the future, it became an even bigger deal. And when multiple people close to Ted Williams claimed that he was tricked into agreeing to the procedure against his wishes, the story got even bigger. Then when an employee of Alcor claimed that the lab treated Ted Williams in criminal ways, including accidentally decapitating him, fusing his head to a tuna can, striking it repeatedly with a monkey wrench, and much, much more, the story got bigger. Then finally, when Ted Williams' own daughter came out and claimed that her brother had told her that he planned to freeze their father's body solely because he could sell his DNA to people who wanted to own Ted Williams' genes, the story was massive. At this point, the news coverage quickly shifted from remembering the life of the legendary Ted Williams to covering a legal battle between his children, who were literally fighting over his dead body.
Sorry. This is way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, baseball doesn't exist.
Somewhere in this Scottsdale, Arizona cryonics laboratory may be baseball's greatest hitter, Ted Williams.
Ted chose to have his body cryonically preserved.
Great baseball player Ted Williams' will was made public, clearly requests that he be cremated.
Talk to anyone on the street and say, Ted Williams, oh, is that the frozen guy? That's the sadness.
Ted became a punchline in death. This was something that I believe his son did, some kooky idea. And
sad, inglorious ending for the greatest hitter that ever lived.
It is not a stretch to say that Ted Williams is one of the most well-known, respected, and talented athletes in American sports history. If you ask any baseball fan who Ted Williams is, they will tell you, but a majority of them have never even seen him play. That's because when Ted Williams retired in 1960, he became a living legend and was treated like that for decades to come. During his career, he played in 19 All-Star games, won 2 MVP awards, 2 Triple Crowns, was the last hitter to finish a season batting over 400, and is widely considered the greatest hitter who ever lived, all while missing 5 seasons to military service. He missed 3 years as a pilot during World War II and 2 more while serving in Korea, where he flew 39 combat missions, earned an air medal, 2 gold stars, and nearly died when his plane was shot by an anti-aircraft cannon, forcing him to emergency land without a landing gear. So it is no surprise that when Ted Williams passed away in 2002, it was a big deal. Unfortunately, the focus of his death quickly shifted from honoring his career and legacy to questions about being frozen in hopes of being brought back to life in the future. And these questions only intensified as more strange, suspicious, and flat-out criminal details continued to come out for years to come. And with every new shocking detail that surfaced, people seemed to always blame the same person. And this person was loved by Ted Williams and was probably closer to Ted than anybody else in the world. During the final stages of his life, Ted Williams faced several major health issues. He battled a heart condition which required open heart surgery and suffered multiple strokes throughout the last decade of his life. He was no longer able to fully operate on his own, so his son, John Henry Williams, came to Ted's aid starting in 1991. He took over Ted's entire business, watched over him nonstop, and eventually earned power of attorney. This is basically a legal agreement that allows somebody else to make decisions for you, meaning that by the end of Ted Williams' life, his son John Henry was in control of basically every decision he made. Ted Williams came extremely close to his son during the final years of his life, despite being frequently absent during his childhood. John Henry personally helped Ted Williams tremendously during his old age, and Ted loved him for it, and he made it publicly known. John Henry Williams seemingly stopped his entire life and moved across the country in order to care for his sick, aging father. When most people do this, they are praised for it.
He sounds like he was just doing what something a good son would do. But, I don't know.
John Henry Williams was not. From even before Ted Williams' death up until John Henry's own early death, he was constantly accused of trying to suck every penny he could from his father.
Really?
John Henry Williams is seen by many as a case of extreme nepotism. Perhaps the most obvious case of this was his own baseball career. In order to bond with his father and honor his legacy, John Henry Williams decided to start his professional baseball career at 33 years old.
What?
An idea that he says he got while watching the attacks on 9/11 with his father on TV. So even though he never even played in college, Ted Williams convinced the Red Sox to sign his son to play for the rookie ball team at 33 years old. He played 2 games, went 0 for 6, and then injured his ribs. He would play another season the following year for a professional independent team,
Wow.
and he didn't put up the best
Wow.
stats. Although a little bizarre, John Henry's short baseball career was nothing compared to the long list of harsh accusations that would eventually come out. They mostly
looks a
surrounded
lot
his
like
strange
him.
business tactics, weird methods of squeezing money from his father, and neglecting his dad's health so bad that the Department of Children and Families came to their home. The details of these accusations would eventually all come out via tell-all books, newspaper articles, and court documents that all stem from one decision: having his father's body frozen. According to John Henry and his sister Claudia, they convinced their father to agree to cryonics in the last years of his life, even
Why?
though his official will says he wanted to be cremated. Immediately after his death, Ted Williams was flown on a private jet to a cryonics facility in Scottsdale, Arizona to be preserved. Alcor is the name of this lab, and for good and very bad reasons, they are likely the most well-known cryonics lab in the world. As of 2019, they had 168 patients and 90 pets, including dogs, cats, turtles, and
What?
even chinchillas, frozen in large steel containers like this. Patients pay up to $200,000 depending on if they want to freeze just their heads or their entire bodies, all in hopes that one day in the future, science will evolve enough to bring their bodies back to life. Mainstream scientists have not hesitated to constantly point out how bizarre and how unlikely this practice will ever be possible. To simplify this,
Bro, you're telling me that this facility has multiple bodies of people that have a chance. When I mean a chance, I mean like a negative % chance. Right, that it's not him. It's not like I'm pretty sure. Isn't like there like that rumor going on that Walt Disney's body, or is that confirmed? Or like Walt Disney's body is like frozen. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but yeah. Bro, I feel like that's just a waste of time. Cause if I was in, that would have been dumb. I'm not gonna lie, that's dumb. Because why would you want to be like? The world would be so different. You won't even be used to it. It'll take you so long to adapt to it. Like it just wouldn't make sense,
science
bro.
behind this process, one scientist said it is like taking ground beef and turning it into a cow. The most common thought amongst most scientists is that even if future science is able to take the cells of a dead person and reanimate them, the possibility that a company like Alcor could store the body well enough for that long of a time is extremely unlikely at best. However, this has not stopped some extremely respected scientists from becoming involved with Alcor and co-signing the studies surrounding cryonics, and most of their members revolve back to the same logic. Even if chances
There's
of
people
survival
in
are
there,
low,
by the way.
it's better than being buried and
Or
having
at least
no
their bodies,
chances at
but
all. And this is what attracts a lot of members of the cryonics community. Make a large monetary investment to a company like Alcor for the unlikely chance that one day you will become immortal. Alcor itself has been involved in several
Bro, that's
controversies
impossible.
and many lawsuits that have accused them of storing bodies without proper approval from patients, using unsafe and unsanitary medical practices, and several Alcor members were even arrested in 1994 when a courier ruled that they had murdered a patient via
What?
injection in order to speed up the freezing process. However, a judge later ruled that there was no foul play in this death, and Alcor successfully sued for false arrest. And to be fair to Alcor, when you're in the business of taking bodies of people immediately after their death, often transporting them across the country to freeze and store their bodies with hope of bringing them back to life in the future, it doesn't matter what you do, you're probably going to be involved in some scandals. And Alcor definitely has
Probably,
been.
but like
However,
still, it's
none
not
of them
worth
have
it.
even
Is that what
come
they have to
close
do to
to
keep
the one
him?
that surrounded Ted Williams and their treatment of his body? The chief of operation at Alcor, Larry Johnson, had only worked there for less than a year, but according to him, what he learned during that time made him feel so guilty, he had no choice but to become a whistleblower. He would go on to accuse Alcor of dumping contaminated blood down sewer drains, conducting harmful experiments on dogs, and even killing multiple patients prematurely in order to speed up the freezing process. But these accusations are only minor compared to the ones that Larry Johnson would later expose in a tell-all book, which wasn't even released until after the trial concluded. Within days of his death, Ted Williams' first daughter, Bobby Jo, had already started the process of trying to get her father out of the cryonics lab and cremated, as she says were his final wishes. She entered a legal battle against her two half-siblings, John Henry and Claudia, who supported cryonics and were members themselves. According to Bobby Jo, John Henry had called her about a year before Ted Williams' death and told her that he planned to sign her dad up for cryonics. When Bobby Jo rejected this idea, he responded by saying, quote unquote, "But wouldn't it be neat to sell Dad's DNA?
What?
There's lots of people who would pay big bucks to have little Ted Williams's."
It's not easy.
Okay.
By saying, quote unquote, "But wouldn't it be neat to sell Dad's DNA? There's lots of people who would pay big bucks to have little Ted Williams's running around." It seems absolutely ridiculous that John Henry would actually freeze his father for the sole reason to sell his DNA, but when this alleged quote became public, along with the reports of missing DNA in the Alcor lab, people's minds began to go in some very dark places. What followed was a massive backlash against John Henry by fans, reporters, people close to Ted Williams, and even his own family. Since taking over the Ted Williams business, John Henry had had several businesses fail, including a Ted Williams museum, a Ted Williams store located inside a mall, a marketing company, and a web hosting company called Hitter.net, which was highly criticized when Ted Williams was seen shamelessly plugging the company while being honored at the 1999 All-Star Game. There were rumors that John Henry had forcefully taken off Ted Williams' Red Sox cap and replaced it with a Hitter.net cap right before he stepped onto the field, and baseball purists around the country were furious. Although this probably never happened, 80-year-old Ted Williams wasn't exactly the typical internet user, so promoting his son's web hosting company seemed pretty ingenuous at the time. It seems like the only sustainable business John Henry had was selling his father's autograph, and he made a lot of enemies while doing this. Ted Williams' signature is known for being heavily counterfeited, and John Henry had no problem accusing people for selling fake autographs. Often, these signatures may have actually been real. He would only acknowledge Ted Williams' autographs that were authenticated by him, and many people in the industry had problems with this, and they had problems with John Henry in general. He was even accused of bragging about being able to flawlessly copy his father's signature. And one store owner said he would bet his own life that John Henry had sold Ted Williams' autographs that he had signed himself. But as we'll later find out, signed memorabilia is not the worst thing that John Henry was accused of faking signatures on. One of Ted Williams' business associates claimed that Ted told him that he felt like a prisoner in his last years. A woman who worked in the household claimed that John Henry would force Ted to do autographs for hours, all just for money. Another family aide accused John Henry of underfeeding his father, forcing him to sign autographs, and not letting him leave the house, causing the Florida Department of Children and Families to investigate the matter. But when they got there, they didn't find anything wrong with how John...
Bro. First off, if I'm 80 years old, I am not letting my son control my life, buddy. I'm not. I'm still here. I'm still your daddy. I still control you.
Henry was treating his father. John Henry was obviously losing the public image battle when it came to the lawsuit, and his sister was doing everything she could to get her father out of Alcor, and she had a ton of support. She used a letter from 1991 and a will from 1996, both written by Ted Williams, clearly stating that he wanted to be cremated. John Underwood, who wrote 3 books with Ted Williams, publicly said he knew Ted wished to be cremated, and more information about Alcor came out as well. Apparently, the lab was given the body without ever getting any paperwork signed by Williams himself, which is against their policy. And the only thing on record that proves Ted Williams agreed to cryonics was a piece of paper stained with oil, which John Henry said he found in the trunk of his car. Two of Ted Williams' healthcare assistants claim this paper was a complete fraud forged by John Henry.
Look at that.
Even though the entire world and evidence was against John Henry and the idea of Ted Williams being frozen in the first place, there was some reason to believe he was telling the truth. Bobby Jo, the daughter of Ted Williams trying to get him out of Alcor, had not actually seen her father in years leading up to his death, meaning that she never actually had a conversation about cryonics with him.
Oh, really?
She claims this is because John Henry had used his power of attorney to push her out of his life, and although the reasons for the separation is not entirely clear, Ted Williams had cut her out of his will, and it is pretty clear they did have a rocky relationship throughout the years. In fact, Ted Williams had a rocky relationship with all of his children throughout the years. Known for having a bad temper and being absent from his kids' lives while they were growing up, John Henry was definitely closer to Ted.
That's probably because of his baseball career, but
than any of his other kids, and perhaps anybody else in the world. Ted Williams seemed to trust him despite the many allegations against him and the many people who didn't like him. Al Cassidy, longtime Williams family friend and executor of Ted's estate, sided with John Henry and believed the note signed by Williams was genuine. And this is a big reason why the lawsuit was eventually settled. According to Bobby Jo, the lawsuit ended solely because it was costing her too much money. It cost her over $80,000 in legal fees. The case was settled out of court, and it was decided the body would stay in Alcor under the condition that John Henry would never sell his father's DNA. However, the conflict was far from over.
Really?
In 2004, John Henry Williams unexpectedly passed away from leukemia. His sister's husband spoke on her behalf, saying, quote unquote, "He's a liar, a thief, a cheat. And the Bible says, honor your father and you will live long." Well, John Henry didn't honor his father, and God came calling. So it is pretty obvious that the family was not on the greatest terms at this time. Shortly after that, another lawsuit was made against Alcor in attempts to get Ted Williams out of the facility. And shortly after that, a tell-all book written by former Alcor
this is like the
Chief
perfect
Operating
time to get him
Officer
out.
Larry Johnson, detailing some of the craziest details of Ted Williams' freezing, was released. According to the book, he was taken to Alcor without any signature from Ted Williams and was accidentally decapitated, even though the Williams family requested that he be frozen in one piece. Dozens of people came to the facility to take pictures with Ted Williams and see the procedure. His head was frozen to a tuna can, and while trying to transport the head to a new storage unit, an employee struck the head twice with a wrench trying to dislodge the tuna can. Many samples of Williams'
Bro, what?
His DNA went missing, and Alcor employees even joked about putting
multiple pieces of his DNA
on eBay or sending it in a package to the Williams family because they hadn't paid their full bill yet. And the second lawsuit was also dismissed from court because of the agreements made during the first lawsuit prohibiting Bobby Jo from raising the issue again. So whether you like it or not, that's where Ted Williams is today, frozen in a steel cylinder, waiting to be reanimated.
Wow. That's crazy. I have no words. Like, I literally have no idea. Like, I don't even know what's true. I don't know if Ted Williams wanted this, if his son forced him to do this. We don't know what's true anymore. We really don't. We really have no idea. But hopefully one day we can get the truth out about this. And if the rumors are true about him being decapitated and just all that stuff, that they get him out of the place. Because his body's been there over, 20-something years? So hopefully we can get his body out of there, if it's in still one piece still. And if his, it's called his will. If he had his will, he didn't like he wanted to be cremated. He gets cremated and get out of there, bro. Like, I don't know, bro. We don't even know if it's being properly stored. This was a very interesting video. I'm gonna do a little bit more digging on this after the video, but yeah, this is crazy. What do you guys think? Comments below.